Welcome to the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast.
Well, then Perez has got the better of it, and he looks to get the better of Schmeichel, and he's done it. Wilson's going to fall here for Alexis. Henry, chance.
You say calamitous loss away to Watford that hurts our top four chances. I say all the more reason to go for the Europa League. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, and you can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Hey, look, I look at it this way. Arsene is crazy like a fox. If we drop out of the top four race, then he has to go for the Europa League. And then when we win the Europa League, he can hold that up as a massive accomplishment, and everybody wins, except, fans that go to the games and people that have to watch this stuff and the players that are put in bad situations and all that stuff. But we'll come on to that. I am here to discuss what was a fairly typical Arsenal performance, sadly enough, with two gentlemen who I think are just as enthusiastic about discussing it as I am. The first is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Stilberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
Hello there indeed. And Clive. You can find him on Twitter at Clive P. And the P is for please don't make me watch any more Arsenal away performances. Clive P AFC, and his name is Clive. Hello, Clive.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. So, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I think our away form over the past year is the same as teams like West Ham and Burnley and things like that. It's not good. We added another loss. I should say we snatched defeat from the jaws of victory in this one. Against a Watford team that I thought was dreadful until they realized, like a lot of teams playing us lately, that actually we suck and there's nothing to be afraid of. And once they realized that, they kind of came on to us and eventually got the winner. We'll go through all the events, all the interesting things. I particularly like the segment of the game where all of our players decided to just stop running around and playing football for a while, so we'll come on to that. But let's start at the beginning with the lineup. And Tim, I tweeted out before the game what I always do, something negative. But in this case, I think I had good reason. I looked at this lineup and I thought, where are the goals and where's the creativity? You have a player in Lacazette who's probably not going to create his own goal-scoring opportunities in the way that an Alexis does. And in Welbeck and Iwobi, you have energy and running and physical power, but maybe not the creativity to unlock a defense. And the midfield certainly didn't look like adding any of that. Were you most concerned when you looked at this lineup that end product was going to be a challenge on the day?
Yeah, a little bit. I think the kind of story of this is, and I think a lot, not all, because there's a lot of different things coming together and why we're so poor away from home lately, but I think the main crux of the issue is that Arsene can't live with Özil and Alexis, and he can't live without them. And I'm only really nominally including Özil in that. Really, this is about us missing Alexis Sanchez in this game because he creates and scores goals. And we didn't quite have enough of either of those. And I think Arsene has clearly... I kind of hypothesised at the beginning of the season that Arsene didn't want to play Alexis and Özil together. And actually, the more things go on, the more it just looks like he plain doesn't want to start Özil anymore, and actually it's not a problem with the two of them, it's just Özil, which I can kind of understand. And I mean, the thing is, with Özil and Alexis, we have lots of creativity there, we have goals via Alexis, but we kind of lack structure. And so you put players like Welbeck and Iwobi in, and they give you lots of structure, but they don't give you the goals and the assists, really. I think that front three, Welbeck, Iwobi and Lacazette, looked very interesting in the Community Shield against Chelsea. Mm-hmm. But that's a different game and that's a different team. I think if you want to play a fairly high pressing game or you want to create turnovers, that front three is quite a good one. The problem is you're not really going to get that against Watford. And not only that, but it's all very well that front three being quite good at pressing, quite good at breaking down, kind of breaking lines in terms of the other team trying to get out of defence. But when you're playing Chelsea, it's because David Luiz brings the ball out and he plays it out. I mean, Watford don't really do that quite as much, so there's not as much for them to block in the first place. So basically, we were playing a kind of a high-pressing, turnovery kind of front three, and that wasn't the game we were playing. Also, to be fair to them, we've got that front three who can do all of that, but then nothing behind them is conducive to counter-attacking football. Xhaka, El Neni, they're not really the sort of midfielders you kind of want if you're going for like the high press and forcing turnovers and things like that. So it just wasn't the right front three for this game. I think perhaps if we'd have, I think perhaps his plan was probably let's go with Welbeck, Iwobi and Lacazette. Let's be like quite tight. I wouldn't go as far as to say conservative, but let's be compact in the way we attack. And then, let's bring Özil off the bench for the last 25 minutes. And, when the game's a bit more stretched and we need to open them up. And to be absolutely fair, even though I think we were very pedestrian for the entire game,
it just about worked.
I completely agree with your assessment. I was sitting there for the whole game thinking, why are Watford still standing off us?
Yeah.
Why are they still doing this? Because we did not look inspiring at all. It just looked to me like Watford were scared to attack us. But, within, and I know we'll come on to this later, but within, a few minutes of coming on, it basically that nearly worked, but the finish wasn't there. And then, we kind of capitulated after that. But I can't pretend I was hugely worried about that front three. I just thought, well, that's not going to be the front three that plays the whole 90 minutes. So I'm kind of prepared to ride it out. But, I mean, basically this was a glimpse of Arsenal without Alexis Sanchez. And
Mesut Özil for an hour.
Yeah.
And Aaron Ramsey, Sanchez, for that matter. I mean, it could be 2018 Arsenal minus anyone we might sign. Haha, LOL.
Yeah, exactly. But I think Sanchez was the big miss, and it wasn't pretty without him. But you're right, no Özil, no Ramsey as well. It probably stands to reason we were a bit blunted.
Yeah, and I mean, look, to be fair, we got the goal. It wasn't really through anything we did brilliantly in open play, but we got it, and from that point, the way we conspired to lose it was pretty bad. And some of it's onto the referee, which, we'll touch on. Some of it's of our own making, a lot of it's of our own making, but we probably should have been away in the distance. These are games I think you have to take advantage of, though, guys, because when you go away to teams like this, sometimes they're really up for it, they're really at it, and you're on your heels and you're lucky to get a draw. Some days they're not, and I thought Watford were actually really poor, really passive. There was space for Lacazette to run into. And when you encounter a Premier League side in that kind of form away, you have to punish them, and I don't think we had the players to do it. We didn't create anything building the play. What I thought we did all right was when we got the ball off them, we created some counterattacking opportunities, but no one seemed to want to play the hurtful ball, the ball in behind that could really create something. I don't think we got enough from our overlapping players. I'm not sure why that is. Kolasinac had sort of a non-characteristically poor game, I thought, with his final ball. He tripped over a few. He didn't get the pullback right on a couple occasions. But, Clive, for me, the story of this game was Lacazette making good runs into space, no one really being able to find him in a midfield that couldn't break lines, that couldn't be progressive, that couldn't deliver the ball into the hurtful areas. Why don't you just give me your assessment of our in possession part of the game?
So, when the team came out, the first thing you think is, that looks nice, quite structural. I thought, Watford are a physical team. They're a fast team. I think they recorded the tallest team in the league now. And I looked at that team and thought, okay, that's quite physical. I like the structure, but where's the magic? Where's the quality? And I think we all saw Lacazette make numerous
I'm just going to stop you really quickly. I think you'd have to say that we had plenty of magic. We made a 1-0 lead. Disappear.
Yeah, exactly.
No one? Okay.
I like it. Okay. So, Lacazette was making that lateral run, peeling in behind. And you could see countless players see him and think, I'm not sure I can make that pass, and just turn inside and pass back to El Neni, who passed back to Xhaka, who went out to Monreal, and we go around and around the circle we go, right? So we did play a couple of heavy passes. Iwobi had a chance to get in a few times. Him and Bellerin, the passing was quite sloppy. And we just lacked quality. And, for all of our meekness and softness over the years, we've always had quality. We've always had quality of ball movement, quality of pass. We may be a little bit tick-a-tacker in the last few years, but when we have got the ability, we've always had players who can make that pass. And this was an Arsenal team with players who are okay, but none of them are really a dead cert to make that pass, to have that expression on the pass so the ball stops and doesn't run out into the car park, right? So I felt we were very heavy-footed, very lacking in confidence. And once we scored, we didn't have the urgency to get the second goal. We just sort of went for the motions. And that always leaves you in danger. And I keep, as soon as Watford realised that if we played in Arsenal's half, they could be in problems. And the moment they did that, we didn't have the brains or the coaching to say, how can we get out of here? And it's something that's happened a few times, and I'm sure Tim will agree. When we lose Welbeck, which we have lost Welbeck many times in games, our ability to get out is lost, and then we need to think about a plan to get out of our half when we're being pressed back. And this game reminded me very much of Everton away last season and Man City away last season, where first halves we did okay, and then the other team said, they're crap. Let's just run them off their feet. Let's just run them off their feet because they're rubbish. And basically that's what they did, and they just got more emboldened as the minutes went on and eventually stole the game.
Well, and you know what? Look, Troy Deeney, and we'll come to the comments later, much later, but he said, we didn't fear them. They don't have an aura, and yet they played totally scared. I don't think they looked like a team that trusted their ability to get at us, and they really added very little to the game early. And so, Clive, I guess my question to you is, how much of this is on a manager who seems to have lost his sense of adventure? I mean, this is a manager who used to like to go for the kill, who used to be proactive. And I mean, forgetting the fact that he never, quote unquote, did tactics. Manchester City conceded 2, but they scored 7. I think in the Premier League, 1 point is worth almost as little as 0 points, especially against teams like this. All right, if you're at Stamford Bridge, if you're at Anfield, if you're at Old Trafford, fine. But these are games you need 3 points. I mean, isn't there an argument that the manager lets you down by picking a side like this? Because sure, it's a sturdy side, it's a physical side, it's got players like El Neni who probably won't hurt you, but probably won't hurt them either. Is it incumbent on him to say, screw it, I need 3 points, I'm going Jack Wilshere, I'm going Mesut Özil, I'm going with players that have the devil in them, that have the needle ball, that have the final ball? I mean, how much responsibility does Arsene take for the fact that he seems increasingly willing to pick sturdy and competent sides instead of adventurous goal-scoring sides?
I honestly don't think he thinks that way, and I'm not going to make excuses for him. I think we all agree on this podcast that we are. No, that's fair.
You think he looks at this lineup and sees the way they can get goals and create goals and doesn't see the deficiencies, that he has a blind spot for it?
I suppose. Okay, I'm not going to make excuses for him, but if Mesut Özil passes that ball into net, which he has the ability to do.
Right, but he picked him at 60 minutes, not from the start, right? I mean, how many more chances does Ozil get or create? Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
This is where I'm going, right? So we had Koscielny just back from injury. We had Özil just back from injury. We had Welbeck just back from injury. We had Kolasinac just back from injury, and he didn't look very fit. So we had a number of players that were in the red zone. We had Xhaka playing his first league game for 2 years, wherever it was. So I don't think he could gamble on all of them to play. I just don't think he could. And he chose to bring Özil on the hour mark, and it nearly worked, right? So I think it's purely a fitness thing. We ended up losing Welbeck. We ended up losing Koscielny. And it impacted us. It definitely allowed Watford to become more emboldened. And it makes you wonder. I mean, I'm not his biggest fan, but I must be wondering if you're bringing Welbeck back, or he's had an injury, and then you want to have speed. What's to see a Walcott not figure if Alexis is injured? I'm looking at things like that. I'm just looking at replicating the ability to move up and down the pitch. If Welbeck goes out, surely we need to be thinking about adding speed so we can get out. And that was a major thing for me. Couldn't he see we were being pressed? What are we going to do by the changes that we made? So I think it's purely a fitness thing. I don't think it was a conservative thing. I think he picked a physical team for Watford. I wanted that. I thought Alexis would play, He didn't play. But if Alexis plays, I think we get that second goal, because what I really missed was him in the build-up. We just look so unintelligent in the build-up play. And I know Alexis is loose on the ball, but he's very visible, very available, and he takes the ball. He's very brave. He buys fouls. He moves people around. He attracts people. He uses overlaps. He's just a catalyst for our team. And without him, I felt we lacked magic. We lacked bravery. We were a bit average. We were a bit eighth in the table. That's what we looked like. And,
well, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, and then when Watford, once they realised it, they said, yeah, we're having you, you're rubbish.
Well, yes, and that's part of my problem, Clive, is I think the burden is on you when you play the smaller teams for the first 30 minutes to put them to the sword so thoroughly, to push them back so aggressively, to dominate them so effectively in their half that the will goes out of them, that the belief and the fight goes out of them. And we picked a side that they could probably keep at bay, that they could probably stay in the match with, and at home to a side that's growing in confidence, they're eventually going to figure out that you can be had. And I think that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, it did happen. And it's interesting, the reaction to this game. I mean, obviously, when Arsenal lose a game, the world ends, right? But
well, I'm going to level with you. Regardless of Arsenal's results, there's a pretty reasonable chance the world's ending anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So it's quite interesting to see the fan reaction online and see who they blamed. Right, so some blame Xhaka, some blame Del Neni, some blame the manager,
referee,
some blame the referee, some blame lack of leaders, some blame Bellerin, some, it just went around and around and around, and it's becoming quite tiresome. I started to think about. I was listening to people talk about Crystal Palace fans, talking about the atmosphere in the ground, and talking about them, and they had 0 points and 0 goals. And I heard them talking about the crowd, and in such phrases that I never hear anyone talking about Arsenal crowds. And that's a shame that we become such a fractious group of fans, whether it be online or in the stadiums. I'm sure Tim's seen many things around the country in the stadiums that doesn't make him feel happy. And I don't travel around the country like I used to in the olden days, but I wonder about the fan experience. I wonder about the whole aura around the club. From a spectating point of view, I'm always looking at about how attractive Arsenal are, and the way we are so focused on the things that are not going right in the club at the moment is not making us the most attractive place to be. It's not making players feel comfortable, and everyone's looking for someone to blame, and we can't even agree on that. Right? It's so many things.
Well, there's so many great people to blame. And by the way, I think it's worth pointing out that Highbury was called a library long before we were in this rut, and social media has amplified negativity. But I think, Tim, you'd probably agree with this. Negativity is not a new thing for fans. It's just that social media amplifies our access to that negativity, and then it's a feedback loop where it grows. But I do think the players are somewhat removed from that, and while they know what's going on, I certainly think that winning, more than anything else, is what binds a club together and makes the club feel attractive. Now, but before we move on to incidents like the goals and the penalty decision and things like that, I just want to spend one more second on the midfield with you, Tim. I mean, we bought Granit Xhaka for what's not actually a very big fee by modern standards, but it was meant to be an important addition to the midfield to solve a problem that arguably we haven't solved since Gilberto Silva left. And this is a guy who plays great long balls and can break lines with his progressive passing. And maybe the defense of him has just continued to be, he needs the right partner, he needs the right partner, he needs the right partner. But on this day, I just felt that you saw how limited he is. I don't know that Arsene Wenger, anyway, can ever play a midfield with someone as limited as Xhaka and be effective. No right foot, not very mobile, doesn't seem to have an awareness defensively of where to be, or the energy or the work ethic to help back defensively. He doesn't tackle. Are you getting to the point where you're starting to become concerned, especially when the partner isn't that sort of Goldilocks magical partner for him, that Granit Xhaka is too limited to deliver what we need from him on a game in, game out basis? I mean, it's been a bad start to the season.
Yeah, it has been. It has been. I think you've got to start asking that question. I think the thing is, Wenger's had this type of player before, this kind of left-footed, deep-lying playmaker to open up the angles on the pitch. You know, he had Edu, he had Manu Petit, he had Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. He brought Stephen Hughes into the team for a little while. The problem is, they all played next to a guy called Patrick Vieira. And, you know, I always maintained that Manu, you know, back in the kind of Vieira and Petit days, that was about 80% Vieira and 20% Petit, that midfield combination. And I didn't really bat an eyelid when Manu Petit left, because I don't think he was contributing very much anymore.
So you're saying we don't have the Vieira, we don't have the person to play the Vieira to Xhaka's poor man's Petit.
Yeah, basically. And you know, it's kind of pissing in the wind, because of course we can't replace, you know, Patrick Vieira, because there hasn't been, you know, whenever a new midfielder comes through, everyone still calls him the new Patrick Vieira, even though Vieira retired years ago. So it's slightly moot, but I think maybe Arsene kind of misjudged this one, and if he was looking for a long-term heir to Santi Cazorla, I think he probably only looked at one of Cazorla's qualities, which was, you know, his ability to spread the play. The difference being, of course, Cazorla could do it with both feet. So, you know, I agree with your points about Xhaka's limitations, but they're just so much more exposed in this setup, and we don't have a midfielder that will kind of cover those shortcomings. You know, Aaron Ramsey's a really, really good central midfielder. And I mean, it says something that Xhaka and Ramsey is the only midfield combination that sort of works, and it really only sort of works. And you know, we've said this many times on this podcast, it sort of works just because everything else we have emphatically doesn't. And so, because it's not a complete shit show, and it can be 7 out of 10, you know, we kind of look upon it quite favourably. But it's not, you know, it's not a fantastic midfield combination. It works more often than it doesn't on balance.
It just about gets by.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think against teams where we have less of the ball and they push us back into an accidentally more defensive shape, it kind of works, because Xhaka can get it deep, give it to some, you know, Ramsey rampaging up the pitch and start sort of a counterattack. But that's almost an accident more than a design. Yeah, absolutely. And just nothing else we have really works at the level required. And the thing is, so I listened, you know, to the Arsecast Extra today, and James and Andrew were talking about, you know, hitting upon a point I think we've all kind of hit upon over the last year or so, which is what kind of team are Arsenal trying to be? Are they a possession team? Are they a counter-attacking team? You know, what are they? Who are they? And 9 times out of 10, your identity comes from your central midfield. And I think Arsenal's identity does come from its central midfield, in that we don't have one. Yeah, that's a great point. Not a good one. I think if you ask most Arsenal fans right now, what is the identity of Arsenal, you'd say a dysfunctional midfield. And that's kind of weird, isn't it, Tim? I mean, Arsene Wenger, you identify with possession-oriented, slick passing control in the middle of the pitch. And maybe nothing has been more emblematic of the deterioration of the Arsene Wenger footballing way than the deterioration of the midfield, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We tried to win a league with Ramsey and Flamini. I appreciate there was some injuries.
Did we do it?
But well, no.
No, all right.
And it was, but even then it was, you know, it was because like Francis Coquelin got injured, and with all due respect to Francis Coquelin, that shouldn't be an injury that ends your chance at winning the league. You
mean Freiburg's Francis Coquelin? No, probably not.
And it's just I don't know. We're perhaps hauling over old ground here, but I just don't think I'll ever understand why Arsene didn't think this was a priority in the summer transfer window. I think it's just been so obvious for such a long time, and we're kind of reaping what we sow there. And I think a lot of my quote unquote optimism for the season. You know, I don't usually get too hung up on signings, but I was kind of thinking, well, we definitely don't have, like, that's definitely something we don't have inside the club at this moment. We don't have like a proper central midfield, so we're going to address that, aren't we? Aren't we?
No.
Oh no, we're not. And then as soon as we didn't, it was just like, well, you know, basically the best we can hope for is that our 6 out of 10 midfield partnership stays fit, and that's a bit of a bit pie in the sky.
Which is,
anyway,
by the way, composed of one player who has a terrible fitness track record.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
yeah,
you know, there you go.
It's a concern. And look, I was going to dive into El Neni. I don't know that we need to. Every squad has a player like El Neni. You know, he's a safe pair of feet. I think at this point, are we all just prepared to throw our hands up and say he's kind of your tofu player? He is a player you can put on that makes you stable and secure, and that's about it. And I just think you look at Manchester City, and look, I'm not trying to reduce Pep Guardiola to a manager who just throws a lot of attacking options out there, but Antonio Conte is a pretty detail-oriented manager by all accounts, and his team's struggling to get the goals, and Guardiola's isn't, because Guardiola throws a lot of attacking players out there. I think the manager, Arsene Wenger, is going to have to realize that the only way we're going to achieve anything in the league is by picking up 3 points as often as possible, and that we're never going to be great defensively. So securing the ball and securing the defensive area of the pitch, while a nice philosophy, gets you nowhere without goals, and he's going to have to start being more adventurous with his selection, is just my take on it. Clive, I think One sort of weird bright spot here is that I thought Per Mertesacker looked like the best of all the defenders on the pitch. Koscielny looked a little off the pace for obvious reasons, but Mertesacker was organized. He was in the right place. His positioning is so much better than Mustafi's. He scores the header. I mean, with Mertesacker out there, we looked like we had the right kind of leader. You know, the manager talks about Mustafi as a leader and an organizer, which I think is a sham. How nice was it to see the captain on the pitch doing captain stuff? I mean, was he the one player for you that came away from this with a lot of credit?
Yeah, statistically, he's probably our man of the match, right? I think I thought he looked okay, but like many, he ran out of petrol. He ran out of petrol.
Maybe the problem is that he's drinking petrol, because if that's the case, he could be very sick. Very, very sick.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. He just physically fell away, and
he's old. He doesn't play very often. That's going to be the problem with relying on him.
He just got caught out. I just felt we spent too much time in our half, and I could see it even on the TV. You could see that people were just getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and didn't have the energy to get out. And this is why I was looking for the manager to really do something about that, right? So Per was fine. I thought he did quite well aerially. He recognised quite quickly, no pressure on the ball, drop deep, get you running quickly. So he was arriving quite early. They kept shoving him down in behind Monreal, which made it difficult for him on his left foot, but he doesn't care. He puts it out, jogs back in, gets his position again. He knows how to play football, right? He just ran out of energy. Nothing. I know all this stuff about Deeney saying that he didn't fancy it. Well, yeah, okay, you free yourself about a bit. Now you feel like you can have a chat about Arsenal people, and yeah. And we'll
come on to Deeney's comments, but yeah, I get you. I mean, by the way, quick credit to Xhaka, who we just kicked around a bit. I mean, I thought he was pretty poor and pretty one-dimensional. He did give the corner kick, correct? That was that Mertesacker scored from. So that was one thing he did well. So then,
he did.
Do you seeing Per play that way? Does it kind of make you wonder why the manager hasn't at least tried to give him a little more playing time, or is it simply that you can't start a center back who is gassed at 60 minutes because that's one substitution that you lose every match?
You know, we don't know. I think there's been a couple of games where I felt he was unlucky not to start early in the season. But we don't know the physical shape of him. And I thought he looked good in the Europa League. The standard's not as high. But with Watford, with Deeney and Andre Gray, and strong running forwards that take him for long runs, when they go more direct, they're making him run into the channels. I felt he just fatigued towards the end, but he wasn't the only one. I didn't see an issue with him. I just felt we, as a group, we just ran out of gas, and he was one of those that ran out of gas. Kolasinac ran out of gas. Koscielny ran out of gas. Xhaka and El Neni seemed to be very leggy all of a sudden. Bellerin started the game promisingly, but the deeper he got, he looked not as dominant physically in his own half, looked much better bursting into the other half. We just ran out of zip and energy, and Mertesacker reflected that. But I've got no problems with him. Whether he can do another game at Red Star Belgrade, let's see if he can do that.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean,
No.
I think he's our Premier League center back, right, for as long as Mustafi's out. And, I have to say, for one, like, it was nice to see a calm, organized, astute, effective, on his feet tackling center back as opposed to Mustafi. I enjoyed it. I mean, Clive, the problem for me really came in. I had Ozil as our next discussion point. I'm going to move him back just a little bit to talk about the substitutions. I thought the manager lost the game when he brought Giroud on for Lacazette. Now, I don't want to present.
I have to agree.
I don't want to pretend, is the word, that Lacazette was having the game of his life. But I thought he was making some really interesting runs and no one could find him. Now Ozil's on the pitch. Now you have a chance to combine. We've already seen what Ozil could do when he gave the ball to Iwobi and Iwobi had a shot well saved. Let's give credit where it's due. Gomez did a nice job to get down and save it, or that may put the game away. But it was a chance because, look, here's the way I see it. And then I'll turn it over to you since you're the one who's supposed to be answering the question. I think we're up 1-0. Watford has to start to come at us a little bit. Ozil's on the pitch. Now there's someone who can find Lacazette's runs, and at a time when he's arguably going to have just a little bit more space even to run into than he had. And I thought he had space all day long. And you trust him to finish that chance that he gets. And it gives Watford a reason to have to watch their back door. You bring Giroud on, and the center backs can now play 10 yards further up the pitch. The midfield can play 10 yards further up the pitch. They're not as worried about what's going on in behind them. We lose the pace to run in behind, and suddenly you invite a little more pressure. You invite yourself to sit a little deeper. You have a little bit less threat on the counterattack. How frustrating is it that it seems that Giroud is picked because of the name on the back of his shirt and not what's happening on the pitch?
I could not agree with you more. I really was disappointing. I felt he didn't need to make that substitution. What he should have done was say, I've got Welbeck coming back from injury. He's my speedster. He gets me out. He's my worker down the channels. So what I need to do is share the game. Welbeck gets 65, Walcott gets 25, right? And basically, that's what he needed to do. But he had it in his mind, Giroud's the first sub, regardless of what's happening in the game. Given the fact that Watford were pushing us further and further back, this had to be a game to keep speed on the pitch, to keep transition on the pitch. And we've already spoke about the centre mids. The centre mids are what I call platform centre mids. They're people that when we're in charge of the ball, they can keep the ball moving and rotating. And they've both got a diagonal in them, and they know how to, tick attacker between themselves and just pop through the lines. But they're not going to break. They're not going to travel with the ball. So it's going to be longer passes. So you need someone up front that can threaten their back line. And once we lost Welbeck, we just didn't react. And I just felt Giroud came on. He was it's just a substitution that was done before the game. And that's so annoying. We all know it's coming. And the game didn't call for him. It's no shame on him. If we were 1-0 down, we had the other team press into their box, we'd all be crying for Giroud. We'd all be wanting him on there because in the penalty box, he's very, very good. But he's not good on the halfway line. Right, so and his layoffs were very inaccurate when he came on, and he didn't give us any control. He lost the ball countless times, and found himself doing lots of shuttle runs up and down the flanks, trying to make up for his own errors. So it was a wrong substitution. It didn't have any intelligence in it. It didn't feel the game at all. It was just a substitution that was written down on a piece of paper probably 2 days before the game.
Well, here's the thing. You kick it long to him and he holds it up. The one thing Giroud, in theory, should be able to do is give him the ball in midfield, long ball, and then let him lay it on to the runners. But who are even the runners that were on the pitch? Aghast, Iwobi, and Mesut Özil. There's nowhere for that ball to go, and it invites that pressure to creep up on you. It's really, really frustrating. And Tim, I know you feel the same way. I just want to throw a few statistics out there. I know we're backtracking a little, but just to sort of back up some of the things we're discussing. As far as Mertesacker, 13 aerials won, which really, I mean, that stood out for me in the game. He really had control of the penalty area, not just with his tackling, but with his aerial duels. And then Granit Xhaka, again, the most touches of any outfield player. He's the guy at the hub of it all. 76% passing. He's now in the 70s every game, and you can't have that from the hub, the hub of your midfield. So lots of problems there. But so Tim, you invite the team to have a go at you when you bring on Olivier Giroud. Do you think that sub, combined with just our inability to press our advantage, was the nail in our coffin?
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with the comments that you both made, that this was a case of, well, Lacazette looks a bit tired and I have to keep Giroud happy. And so I'm just going to bring him on. And, we all know that Wenger makes that sort of substitution a lot, where it's just pre-planned, not really thought out, not really according to what's going on in the game. But even then, his other ones, I don't think were fantastic either. I think Iwobi should have been off
he can't play more than an hour. It's just crazy to me that he played 90 minutes. Now, I have to ask, was Welbeck injured? I thought that's what...
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and then
he was.
Obviously, the Koscielny injury was enforced by Koscielny cramping up. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's hard to be too picky about those just because he had to take two guys off for injury.
Yeah, I still would have just brought on Wilshere for Koscielny anyway, personally.
Well, you're chasing the game. Why not, right? I mean, go to a back four and have at it. And
it was clear at that point that, like, what else did we have going forward? Who else was going to produce something for us? Xhaka, El Neni? It's only really Özil is the only one you'd look at there, but he needs to be able to provide for someone, and it's not going to be Giroud, because that's not really his game. So I think the one thing we perhaps have seen with Giroud up front this season, not in a please save our asses in the last 15 minutes kind of context when we're pumping balls into the box, is that little kind of partnership he had out in Borisov with Wilshere, when Wilshere was playing in one of those two positions behind the striker.
The recreate the Norwich goal moments that they had, where for about 20 minutes they seemed intent on doing
exactly. Someone basically to bring the football to Olivier Giroud rather than try and pump it to him on the halfway line. Someone to take it from the halfway line and bring it to him on the edge of the area. Because Iwobi, I think,
to connect the departments. I mean, I think when we're poor, one thing that really stands out is how our three departments, defense, midfield, and attack, are disconnected. And that was very much the case in this game. And I totally agree with you that we needed that linking player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'm not convinced at all that Wilshere has the legs to really play like a proper central midfield role. Certainly not on a regular basis. But I was quite interested by what he did in Borisov, and I do think that with Giroud there, because they kind of suit each other. Actually, in kind of popping off passes around the edge of the box, they both really like that. And I just kind of thought, well, let's bring a bit of that into and it's not something that many teams know about. I know Marco Silva's a very fastidious manager, but I really doubt he'd have had a plan to cope with that. It was a little bit of, what your sub's supposed to bring you, other than like a bit of freshness, not just physical freshness, but freshness of imagination, of approach, and none of the subs really did that. And I know with Wilshere in particular, he's a guy who came through the academy. We've not really seen much of him in the last few years because he's been out on loan. And there is, everyone was singing his name the whole of the second half in the away end. And a lot of that is because of that, because he's like a young local lad and the rest of it. But I really, really did think that the last kind of half an hour, or at least 20 minutes of that game was just made for him when Watford started to come on to us a little bit. I really, really think that it would have just diversified our approach a little bit. Watford would have got quite comfortable having, the likes of Iwobi just kind of dribbling nowhere in front of them, and his legs had completely gone. There was an incident, I think, where he kind of went for a little dribble and he fell over in the box, not because he was fouled, and then he just didn't get up. He just stayed on the ground in an offside position. And it was kind of right in front of us in the away end, and everyone was furious at him. And that's when, the Wilshere chant started again because people wanted Iwobi off the pitch at that stage. And, Iwobi completed 90 minutes and it's, all right, in many respects it is unfortunate that Welbeck and Koscielny, 2 players who've been perhaps rushed back from injury, went off. But I don't know. He really got the Giroud one wrong. And, he didn't give himself, good enough. And even when he was going to bring Wilshere on, there were about 3 minutes left at that stage. So really, what would he have done at that point? So I don't know. I feel like this happens quite a lot, to be honest, where Arsene just doesn't react to in-game situations. And so we get, off the back of a cigarette packet substitutions.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, and I mean, it is frustrating to me because I also think Giroud has been pretty poor this season. Look, I've been known to kick the guy, and I don't mean it, but this notion that because he's stuck around long enough when we didn't address the center forward position to score 100 goals for Arsenal. I mean, Theo Walcott stuck around long enough to score 100 goals for Arsenal. I'm not saying Giroud isn't a quality player, but this is a guy that the manager likes, and I just don't see how you could have looked at the pitch and what was going on in the pitch that day and said, this is the change I have to make. And all too often, we see that. It's not to say that he can't come on and score goals, but how do you affect the game? Look, anyone can get lucky scoring from luck. That's not fair. Let me rephrase. Anybody can come in and score a goal, but as Tim has often said, goals are overrated. It's how you affect the flow of the game and what the game is crying out for. And that leads us to Mesut Özil. And Tim, when Özil came on, I thought the space was opening up. And you saw it. He's on the pitch 2 minutes, and he's got Iwobi in on goal, and he's got himself set up for a goal. And I realize that what happens right after he fails to convert that chance is that we concede the quote-unquote penalty, which we'll come to in a second, that equalizes. But when you have Mesut Özil on the pitch, I mean, when is the manager going to let us see what kind of partnership he can have with the intelligent running and finishing of Alexander Lacazette? What is it going to take for us to see that partnership develop?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because I said at the outset of the podcast, Arsene in many ways can't live with Özil and can't live without him, and we saw why. Like you say, like his first action puts Iwobi through on goal. Second action, that's a really, really poor miss. But then there's also another really poor contribution when in the build-up to Watford's winner, where the ball comes out to him. And he makes no attempt to shield that ball properly. It's not even half-assed.
And then it rolls off his foot back to Watford.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, you don't get away with that just because it's not my game to do that. Do you know what? Fuck off. It's everyone's game. Everyone's game is to attack and defend. Everyone's game is to help the team. The centre-backs don't get away with just launching the ball out of play and then looking round at the midfield and going, we're defenders. Why do you want us to help build play? It's not our job. They don't get away with that. So I don't care. Mesut Özil does not get away with not doing his bit. When he's in a position to do so, when he's actually got back, he's got himself into a useful position. He doesn't get away with it because he's Mesut Özil and he's a brilliant creative player. That's just not acceptable. And so that's where you see the quandary. That's why he's not starting. But then you look at the two gilt-edged chants that he creates, and the finish is really, really poor for his chance. But the movement is excellent. The pass from Iwobi is an obvious one because the movement is so good and he's got himself into such a good space. And it's a bit sliding doors. He could have won the game for us in an instant on a couple of occasions, and then he ended up actually kind of contributing to us losing it. So
I do think it's telling, though. I mean, look, I'm not exonerating him for the things he does poorly because he does those things poorly, and he has done those things poorly. But the fact that within the first 2 minutes of being on the pitch, he created the kind of chance and arrived onto the kind of chance that we hadn't had the whole game before he came on. I mean, bringing Giroud on, not to double down on that, like you have to put your players in the position where their strengths are magnified and their weaknesses are diminished, right, or minimized.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's management. Management is about building team structure around the strengths of your players and trying to hide their weaknesses. I mean, all kinds of mercurial attacking talents have weaknesses. Arsene just seems intent on bringing Mesut Özil on in game situations with players around him and it's not an excuse for him, but that seemed to accentuate the negatives.
Yeah, and you're right to point out that, when he creates that chance for Iwobi, we hadn't created a single opportunity of that ilk for the whole game. Like, it's not like there were a couple of those and he came on and created one. Nobody got put through on goal. Nobody. I'd love to see how many passes we completed in Watford's penalty area prior to Özil coming on. I'd wager it's in single figures. So, it's instant. That difference is absolutely instant. But you're right, like, putting him next to Iwobi, so with those two positions behind the front three, I thought it was relatively clear that Welbeck is kind of the backup to Alexis and Iwobi is kind of the backup to Özil, in that they both almost in their own kind of idiosyncratic way. Iwobi's the prober and the creator and Welbeck's the striker. So they kind of like genuflect those roles. But then, he puts on Özil next to Iwobi, and it's a bit like, now you've got two really similar players next to each other, and you've put Giroud in front of them. And you're quite right. Like, I don't really understand why you don't give Lacazette at least 10 minutes with Özil, because that ball Özil plays for Iwobi. It is, and it's not a bad finish from Iwobi.
No, it's a
really
great save. It's low. It's to the keep. It's to the far post. It's just a good save.
But I bet Lacazette scores that. I bet. I bet he finds the finish there because he's an excellent finisher.
We saw it against Stoke with the disallowed goal.
Yeah.
I mean, he just needs that one chance. I just feel that he's the one guy, in that squad that looked like someone who's going to score a goal. You have to leave him out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what could he have done with one through ball like that from Mesut Özil? But we didn't give him the chance to do that, and instead we replaced him with Olivier Giroud, who has qualities, but his qualities aren't running onto through balls.
To me, sorry, go finish your thought. I apologize.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, Iwobi doesn't have a good relationship with Giroud either for the same reason. So it was just, he just made it totally dysfunctional with those changes.
I think the reason you can make an argument for playing Giroud when you're chasing the game and need a goal is that team starts to sit a little deeper. They start to pack the box, and you're going to start to play long and more direct. And there's no better player to have on the pitch when you're playing long and more direct than Olivier Giroud. But in a game where they have to come on to you and the onus is on them and you're away and they need a goal, this field gets more stretched. That's where Giroud has no use, but worse, he emboldens the opposition to play 5-10 yards further up the pitch. And we saw that. So then, Clive, so let's talk penalty really quickly. Look, I think this is one of those weird situations where I don't know that I'd call it a dive. I don't necessarily have a problem with him not being banned for simulation retrospectively, whatever. Having said that, the pull on Lacazette, or was it on Welbeck? I guess it was on Welbeck, is more of a penalty for me than the one that was given. I mean, I think, Tim, I know you hate discussing refereeing decisions, but none of us think this was a penalty. All right, I agree. I assume, right? That it's a close call.
He maximised it. It was a dive, right? So,
but here's my question: Where is the pressure the team puts on the referee? Where's the team unity? Where's the response? I mean, how often do you see this with other teams where the referee is like basically hounded about the decision? Now, I realize no referee has ever changed his mind before, but where's the fight? Where's the teamwork? Where's the group of guys that are all battling for the points? Did you see the response of a team to that call to get Bellerin's back, to have each other's back?
No, the sort of the action felt like it was a little bit of mini shock. It was like, okay, we're not going to allow this lot back in, are we? And it was like, okay. Then the sort of the fear sets in, and the mental memories come back in of previous occasions when we've given goals away in the second half, and I just felt that just enveloped us. We're asking Bellerin to shout and scream. He's just a kid. Where's our? Is Koscielny going to do it? He's silent. Right, Mertesack's not demonstrative normally. Xhaka's too busy catching his breath. And same for El Neni. I mean, you look around the group, and
so you don't think Mesut Özil is going to run up there and be his champion?
No, I don't think he'd be throwing pizzas around at Alex Ferguson and stuff like that. I just think it is what it is. We've got these wonderful, beautiful technical players that need a perfect scenario for them. And we can normally see it happening. When we see a kickoff and the other team drops into their half, I just sit there and smile and think, oh, we're going to beat you today. And if you stay there long enough, we're really going to beat you. And it's only when teams press us back into our half that we do stupid things and we don't understand how to play on the counter-attack. And we've lost a couple of those counter-attack players. And, you know, I know we can't mention his name, but Oxlade-Chamberlain's one of those counter-attack players. Theo's one of those counter-attack players. Alexis is one. Özil's one. Those players that love to transition, love the spaces to run into. And we didn't have many of those players on the pitch, right? And we did in Özil when he came on, and the quality index went through the roof immediately. And it made Watford look incredibly average in that 5-minute spell. We didn't execute, we let them back in, and we are where we are. The penalty is what it is. I don't want to talk about it because it's an obvious dive. Where he was to get, you know, with referees, the first thing you look for is when both feet come off the ground from one tackle, and that's a classic thing. You flicked yourself forward. Referee should know that. But we were so far into our box by this time. If it wasn't a penalty, something else was going to happen. I'm not sure they'd have won the game, but something else was going to happen. We were going to concede. And it felt like this was an eventuality that something was going to happen, and we just accepted it.
Yeah. Was that the end of your thought? It ended abruptly. It surprised me.
Yeah, he did. I honestly don't like talking.
No,
about,
well, all right. So let me ask you this: what happens after the penalty is kind of shocking because the energy and the effort and look, I don't love talking soft factors, and we'll talk the hard versus soft factors thing in a minute. But for that final 20 minutes, they really came at us. They had a go at us, and I think we have to come to their second. Look, maybe we're tired from international break. Maybe we're a little bit rocked mentally by them getting the equalizer in an inequitable fashion, but the reaction to the way the way their second goal was scored is scandalous, and you can watch that video over and over and over again. Granit Xhaka is rooted to the ground just watching it. I mean, I was more active from my couch than he was from the pitch. Rob Holding goes to sleep. The guy's been on the pitch 5 minutes. You're young. You're trying to make your name in the game. And you go to sleep in that situation. That's what allows the players to ghost in behind him and get the second shot off. Only Per Mertesacker is alert to the danger. Ozil's walking. The fullbacks are making no move towards the ball. I love to talk technique and again, hard factors, actual things taking place on the pitch. But was that the single biggest moment of a lack of desire that you have seen from an Arsenal team in recent memory, Clive? I mean, is it really that simple? Or are there too many to count? And filled away?
Too many to count. We know what we're like. We're not a great off-the-ball team. We have these moments where we have great focus, like Man City away and Chelsea away and the semi-final and the cup final. The fact we can all quote them, it tells you there's something in our DNA that's not quite correct. We're not a great off-the-ball team. What was telling about that snapshot, which I didn't notice at the time, was that basically it's just our 3 central defenders in the box fighting for their lives, and the rest of the team outside the box letting them deal with it. And Watford just creeping into our box and over having more people around the edge of the area than we did. It just looks pretty poor. I mean,
as a manager, how do you respond? Arsene Wenger is going to presumably watch that video, even though he doesn't make his own team watch any video, and see a group of players not running, not working, not helping each other, not fighting till the last moment the ball goes in the back of the net. I mean, how do you respond to that kind of reaction? What can you do as a manager?
It's just work rate, right? It's just work rate. We were outworked, and it's not the first time Watford has scored goals in the last minute. I just heard something today on TV that Watford had 0 players away for the international break, whereas we no doubt we had 9 or 10 players away. Hey, look, it's not. I'm not looking for excuses. We were outworked. We've seen this before. This isn't a new thing. We've seen this before. The worrying thing. Last year, I can remember talking about the Everton and Man City week, where it's very similar to this. Now, a year later, we're talking about Stoke and Watford. And we haven't been to City yet. And yeah, we're going to Everton next week.
I mean, I'm going to tell you something. I genuinely believe we could have another 8-2 coming when we go to City.
Well, you don't know what's going to happen. The worrying thing is we're not creating anything. We don't look like creating anything. We haven't scored a goal in open play away from home.
The only good news is I actually think we play better against teams that push us back a little bit and force us into our own half, into our own defensive shape a little more.
It depends. It depends on so many things, right? It depends on who we've got out on the pitch, what mood they're in, who's fit, who's not fit, what's the weather doing, how long is the grass, what time do we get off the plane from the Europa League, what time's the kick-off? It depends on so many things, right? We all know it as Arsenal followers and watchers, and within 5 minutes we can all tell if we're up for it or not, if we're moving well. Sometimes the second half failings, they surprise me at times. They always catch me out. I always get conned by the team. But you can feel this one just coming upon us, and it's really quite disappointing. But what's really concerning is our fitness levels were so poor, and I'm really concerned about our quality levels. Arsenal may be soft, but they've always had quality, and
this was a mediocre starting 11 for the most part. Yeah. I mean, this is mid-table.
This is a mid-table team, right? And
I'm just going to say
this. There's no magic.
El Neni, Xhaka, Welbeck, Iwobi, that's mid-table. That is not fighting for the title quality. That is not consistent with what any of our rivals would put out on the pitch. And I realize we're missing Ramsey, and that's no Ozil, and that's no Alexis. But the manager's already said Ozil and Alexis could be off in January. I mean, this is what we're trending towards, a very, very mid-table looking squad, especially at the pointy end.
Yep. And we've got this player, Lacazette, who's showing some real sparks of promise. And we're managing to create a narrative around him. By taking him off so soon, we're now creating doubt. We're now starting to impact his confidence. I mean, the one thing that we've done is buy that forward that we've always wanted. And I hope we don't waste 2 years trying to find out how to use him.
Well, and I'm sorry, but you know how you give that guy confidence? You put players who are even better than him. You put Mesut Özil and you put Alexis Sanchez on the pitch with him, and you have him, all of his synapses firing at the thought of being in the right spot to receive a brilliant Alexis through ball or a brilliant Özil through ball, or to run a little harder because if he backheels it in the area, Alexis is going to be there to slam it in. That's how you get the best out of Lacazette. Not putting him out there with a hard-running but limited Danny Welbeck, or a hard-running but limited Alex Iwobi, or midfielders who think that 76% passing gets the job done, or a 3-yard lateral pass gets the job done. It's just not good enough.
You need to. I agree. You need to put them on there with like-minded individuals, and I need to see. We are coming to that point now, and maybe it's going to be Everton away, where we do need to see that three together. They are of the similar quality. You can see it. You don't need to be super smart to work out. There's a balance there. We can all see it. Yeah, we can all see it. They can all move. They all look after the football. They all pop it quickly, and they can. Lacazette's movements, they will be found.
And I'm sorry, Clive, but this notion of, we got to put players out there that want to be at Arsenal. We got to put players out there that want to fight for the team. Well, I got news for you. It wasn't Alexis Sanchez staring at their second goal going in. It was Granit Xhaka. It wasn't Mesut Özil. Well, it was Mesut Özil giving the ball away for their second, but it was also Rob Holding going completely to sleep as Troy Deeney ghosted him behind him, and how you miss Troy Deeney ghosting behind you is anybody's guess. So, I mean, Tim, look, this is the kind of stuff that makes the Yerda types go nuts, right? I mean, this is the stuff that really gets people going Wenger out and fuck them all and sell them all and change the team. It's not necessarily Mesut Özil missing a chance, because that can happen. It's 4 or 5 players standing around watching them get 6 chances to bang in their second. I mean, how hard is it when you're in the stadium and you paid to travel and you paid to be there? Not that it's any, easier for me sitting on my couch, but is that the stuff that really turns the fans against the team, is when it's such a blatant lack of effort as opposed to just lack of execution?
Yeah, I think so. And you'll always get that with British crowds in particular, but you'll get it with most crowds. And actually, even though we were very pedestrian for about 65, 70 minutes or so, the away crowd was still very, very behind the team. It wasn't until that last kind of 15, 20 minutes or so, and usually usually fans are very reactive, depending on the result, and depending on what happens when goals are scored. But honestly, this started just a couple of minutes before that Watford equaliser, and I know the conversation my friends and I were having, we were going, because for the whole game, I'm kind of standing there going, if Watford like figure this out, I think we're in some trouble. And there was just that sign that they just brought it up a notch. And whether that was Troy Deeney coming on or whatever, I don't really know. But you just got this sense that Watford were prepared to bring it up a notch. And maybe that was their game plan all along, because, as Clive said, very few of their players went away on internationals, loads of ours did. And maybe his game plan was, let's keep it tight, stay in the game, and the last 20 minutes we can probably have them. But there was just this real sense, and honestly, the second the penalty went in, everyone I was sitting with went, we're going to lose this now. And that isn't just football fan pessimism kicking in. We really, really felt that if there was going to be an equaliser, there would be a winner to follow it. It just, whether how much that comes down to desire, how much that comes down to fatigue, I don't know. We can debate it all day. But then when you look back at the goal we concede, the winning goal, it's a bit like, well, yeah, Mesut Özil, he does that. Right, well, I say rightly or wrongly, it's wrong, as I said earlier, but that's kind of what he does. You're not massively surprised by that. But, the clip of Granit Xhaka just standing there, I don't believe that's who Granit Xhaka is. We spent most of last season kind of complaining because he would do anything, usually by foul means, but by fair means or foul, to stop players going past him. And he was picking up cards, he was picking up yellow cards and red cards because, he was panicking because he didn't want people going past him. I don't believe that that's Granit Xhaka's character. I don't believe he's the kind of guy ordinarily who just stands there and watches a winning goal go in. But there is something about this team, about this club, in that dressing room at the moment that is turning players that I don't think are like that. But obviously we don't really know what it is, but we can see it on the pitch. Mm-hmm. And I know we're going to come to comments and stuff like that. How many interviews is this manager going to listen to where his own players say they wanted it more than we did? I mean,
it's
honestly,
one thing when Theo out of touch Walcott is saying it. It's another thing when it's your club captain, academy manager, and a hugely experienced World Cup winner.
Yeah, absolutely. And your kind of trusted lieutenant, your club captain who is about to become your academy manager. That's how much of a club man he is. And you know what? Any manager with some professional pride would just resign if he kept hearing his players saying that. And Arsene Wenger must know that, but unfortunately he's scared to retire, and he's just being a bit selfish at this stage, and that means more to him than the welfare of the club. Because if I was a manager and 3-4 times in 6 months my players, not only that it was evidently happening in front of my eyes, but that they felt that it was appropriate and they felt comfortable even to come out and say that, I'd resign. I'd just say, right, I can't do it with these players.
Well, he had the opposite reaction to Theo. He just basically stopped playing it.
Yeah.
I mean, but this is really an in-your-face thing to say. And when you combine it with what Troy Deeney's saying, and you combine it with what Szczesny's come out with this week, and you combine it with what Mertesacker said and what previous players, the picture that's being painted is an unprepared side whose quality has dropped and aura has been lost, and whose players are losing the hunger to fight for it. And when you combine those things, the rot setting in is not such a surprise. Clive, I mean, you talk a lot about the appearance of the club, the outward perception of the club. This is your pulpit. Have at it.
Yeah. Well, again, we're starting to say things that are incredibly obvious now, but what's becoming really apparent, and Tim touched on it, is that the man has stopped improving players. He really has. I look at, when things are not going well in your garden, you look in next door neighbour's garden, right, and their grass always looks better than yours, right? So I look around and I'm thinking, okay, I look at someone like Christian Eriksen. A couple of years ago, he was a weak player. He's so much stronger physically. He can work off the ball. I don't think Christian Eriksen would have missed that chance like Mesut Özil did with lack of conviction. And he's got more power in his shooting, more decisiveness in his movements. And I think Ozil's one of my favourite players I've ever seen. But it didn't surprise me with the meekness of that shot. It didn't surprise me. There wasn't the conviction there. There wasn't the strength, the power. And I long for that. I long for a team with players that say, yeah, if you want it with me, I'm going to have it with you. Yeah, and I'll tell you, people like Vieira, I mean, football's not like that anymore in the same way, but there's different ways to do it, about how you move, about how you press, your intensity, the messages you send to your opponent that says, don't mess with me, I'm going to take you for a run, I'm going to turn you, I'm not going to pop it, I'm going to go the other side, I'm going to run your legs off, I'm going to send you backwards. When we go into a challenge, I'm going to go through you, I'll take one, I'm going to take one for you, then when I'm going to move away, and all my mates going to come in and do it as well. And that is a big part of football, and we just don't do that. When we're confronted, we fall away. And you look around and there's nothing there. There is nothing there. And, you know, most fans are brought up in England where you have to fight for the right to play. And everyone knows if you fight Arsenal, they will fall away. And that, I find that really hurtful. It really bothers me. When I hear the comments this weekend, I just wanted to punch the TV screen. I just wanted to punch anybody. But then I look at the players and I can see Martin Keown thinking, well, if they said that to anywhere near me, they'd get it. But and he's thinking, well, you know what? There's no one in there that's going to do that. There's no one in there with that sort of mentality. And it goes back to the point, I find myself agreeing with Keown quite a lot, actually. It makes me wonder, what type of players are we buying? And are we buying the right type of players? And, you know, if you look at Marco Silva, he's brought 6 or 7 players in. He's up the speed, he's up the physicality, he's up the ability to compete. And he's sitting in the table above us with far less resources. And they're looking over the hedge in the Watford training ground today and they're laughing. They're laughing at all the resources that we have, our £200 million wage bill. And yes, the cars in our car park are probably a little bit nicer. But you know what? We've got, where is our desire and urgency to really show these teams that they can't do that? So
yeah, it's not there. And I'll tell you something. I mean, I think the most worrying thing is if you look at all of our games this season, they've followed a similar pattern, or not all of them, but a lot of them. The Europa League games, the Carabao Cup games, this Watford game, about 60 minutes or 50 minutes of us kind of with that sterile domination before the opposition realizes this is a pillow fight. They can't hurt us. And if we just press them a little in midfield and we step up a little bit, we can have them. And that's really worried. Tim, it sounded like you wanted to jump in on that.
Yeah, and I think kind of, with Troy Deeney's comments, it's quite interesting that they've really annoyed some people. And I get why, because it's perhaps a little unprofessional and probably a bit classless to go on TV and then just say, yeah, Per Mertesacker wasn't up for it. And, that's a bit out of order.
Well, I think it's also a little bit of they can't do that to our pledges, only we can do that to our pledges.
Of course, of course. And, I'm not 100% on board. And, and this segment is about, hard factors v soft factors. And I know that usually the hard factors explain at least 90 to 95% of why your team is good, bad or indifferent. You look at Manchester City, they don't have many ballers or shouters or big men, but they impose themselves on the game with their technique and their quality, which is what Arsenal did once upon a time. And we had that little bit of physical in reserve if we needed it. But largely it was about the quality of the play, which is what City do. But listening to Deeney's comments, I'm not even sure I 100% agree with them. I do think it's a little bit kind of, it's just easy to say that type of thing.
Wise after the fact, yeah. Yeah,
and a lot of it is about, Deeney's being left out of the Watford team at the moment because Marco Silva doesn't really want that kind of player. That's not the image that this team is built in. And a lot of it, I think, is a bit Troy Deeney saying, look, here I am, I'm still the captain, I'm still the man. But to me, the point is not whether it's even true what he said, that, Arsenal don't fancy it or whatever, because a lot of the time I don't think that's true. I think, There are too many games where it happens, but by and large, I do think Arsenal can live with the physical stuff when their mind is on it.
Yeah.
But our problem is, like, for footballers, not so much for football fans, for footballers, perception is massive, and even the perception that Troy Deeney, even if he's just, blustering a little bit, that perception is exceptionally dangerous for us, that players even think that, whether it's top grade analysis or not. Troy Deeney thought that, and that made him give an extra 5-10% with whatever limited skill set he's got. And, other teams will watch that now and they'll think, yeah, I'm going to do that. So basically what we've done is we've already got this pretty terrible away record. We've made our next 4 or 5 away games even tougher because this perception, whether it's true or not, that Arsenal are soft and can be tested, exists. And that's going to make those teams give, Deeney talks about the fear factor, and I think he's right, that it's not really there anymore. But this is even worse than that now, because not only is there not the fear factor, but you've got like Deeney mouth, and by the way, he thinks it's all right to do that. He doesn't think there's going to be any kind of consequences the next time he plays Arsenal. And he's probably right, because Aurelio Gomez made some fairly similar comments when they knocked us out the cup a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And that perception is exceptionally dangerous, because it automatically makes games physically more difficult for us now, just because Troy Deeney threw his weight around and then he went on TV and congratulated himself about it. That makes things really difficult for us, and the fact that perception exists is really damaging. And we spoke a couple of weeks ago about Özil, saying, I went to the German national team, and the Germany players were saying, what's wrong with Arsenal? This is what people think of Arsenal now, and whether it's true or not, or whether it's an over-exaggeration, almost doesn't matter, because that perception it's important and it's dangerous.
Yeah, it is.
It happened last year, Tim. Didn't it? With Everton and Man City that week. They did the same thing. They did the same thing that week. Once Everton worked it out, they sped up their game and ran through us and pushed us back and scored the 2 goals. And Man City did the same thing. Second half, we were great in the first half. They worked us out, up the speed, up the intensity, made it more physical, made it faster, and we couldn't live with it. And here we are a year later, and now Watford are doing it to us. Not Man City with all their superstars.
Well,
but Watford
Crystal Palace did it to us too. I mean, that's the sad thing, is there are more and more of these games you can point to. Look, I think, as to Tim's point, hard factors are 90% of it and soft factors maybe 10% or less, but they start to merge together, because when you talk about the things Szczesny was saying, like at Arsenal, they're just not shown videos of the opposition. We spend more time on that here. I really believe the more prepared a player is, the more that good preparation and tactics can shrink a talent gap or expand a talent gap. And I think that it was one thing when Arsenal could put out a dramatically more talented team, that all the preparation in the world sometimes couldn't close that gap. But when you're putting out Iwobi and Welbeck and Elneny and Xhaka, and you're not showing them video, and you're not preparing them for the game specifically, and the other team knows what you're going to do and has a better plan, that's going to cost you. And I think that's where the last 20 minutes of the game in particular can be problematic, because at some point our team is just freestyling, and then you realize we don't have a plan, and I think that affects the individual player's confidence. But the other thing this does, and we'll just finish on this, and Tim, I know this is something I think that you agree with, just the way people are ready to just discard, and maybe it's, Clive, you say something that's really intelligent, that we protect ourselves, that we say things that protect us emotionally, but the way people are ready to just discard an Alexis Sanchez. Oh, if he wants out, fuck him, we don't need him, sit him on the bench, play him in the reserves, ultimately I think we are too cavalier about players of that quality, and what it means that those players don't want to be at Arsenal, and just how important players like that are, and that you're not going to get very far without attracting those players. And if you don't show ambition and you don't show proper technical planning and coaching, you're going to lose those players. I mean, are we seeing firsthand in a game like this the extent to which we really are limited in quality, and how important someone like an Alexis Sanchez is to the squad?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of tweeted this after the game, that that's why I've never bought the kind of Alexis and his moody little face and his giving the ball away 10 times a game is a massive problem for Arsenal, because what's he holding back? He's not holding back like a brilliant team in waiting. And the thing is as well, when I say this, I understand why people make the argument, because a decade ago I made the same one about Thierry Henry. I wanted us to sell him a year before we did, because I think he got to that stage where his ego was too big for the team. He was being a bit too moody, but the important thing at that point was that we had 18-year-old Cesc Fabregas in the team, and I do think there was a little bit of Henry's nose being put out of joint because someone was threatening to take the throne from him. But I was very much of the I think we can afford to let Henry go, and I think we let Fabregas kind of grow away from his shadow. So I do understand why people make the argument, but I look at this team at the moment and think, well, who's he holding back? Who's going to suddenly emerge from Alexis's stroppy shadow? I just don't see it, and I do think that Alexis is one of the foremost attackers in the world at the moment, and once he goes, we're gonna massively. I mean, we'd struggle anyway, but particularly the position we're in at the moment, and if we're not in the Champions League and blah blah blah, it's going to be massively difficult to replace him. And it's easy to create hypotheses and be wise after the event, but and don't get me wrong, we've had plenty of poor performances with Alexis in the team, but I really don't think we'd have lost that game against Watford with him, because I just think that's how good he is.
Of course he is. He'd have
given the ball away 10 times. He'd have had a strop with someone, but
scored 2 and made 1.
Exactly.
Well, and look, here's the other problem. Look, it's not just about wanting it more and style and talent. It's about the qualities you have on the pitch, and we don't have anyone that can kind of create their own offense, if you know what I mean.
It's about Elliot, it's about the intensity. We lack an intensity of movement.
Ball-oriented intensity.
We just look. So if you're not going to be super intense and tricky and physical, you've got to have that in your team. And we just don't have that. When the ball comes to his feet, it's just moved quickly, gone. People are stepping back. People are attracted to him, which means someone else has got space. Other people feel more confident. They feel like they're going to get the ball, it's going to come through him.
But critically, he has the eye and the touch to then deliver that ball. I mean, Iwobi can move a few people around, but he doesn't really have the next move.
He doesn't. But Iwobi was one of our better players on the day, and he tried his best, and he nearly scored the winner, and he's on the way up. The worrying thing is we haven't got those 24-year-olds you hear me talk about that are good enough, physical enough, powerful enough, technically enough to allow the Iwobis to flourish without the pressure that's heaped upon them. He shouldn't be under this level of pressure.
It's a great point.
He's like, someone like Jesse Lingard is not expected to.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a really good point.
We expect Iwobi to carry us, and when he doesn't do it, we let him have it. When we want Jack on, so what happens when he doesn't do it or gets tackled? We can let him have it. When Ramsey doesn't do it, I do it as well. Well, then he doesn't do it, we let him have it. We don't know who to blame, but what we can say is we're lacking quality, and all of those players are part of the problem, which makes me think: are we buying the right players? Are we buying the right level? Are we doing talent identification correctly? I don't think we are. I don't think we're anywhere near where we need to be. And we don't need to go around kicking people as a reaction to Watford. But there needs to be a level of technical intensity and purpose on and off the ball that we lack. But then you switch back to Chelsea, small pitch. We had all of that and more. And we looked fantastic, and we all loved it. So we can do it where we feel like it, but we can't do it in a sustained way. And this team is trapped around 78 points. We need to find another 10 points to get in the top four.
Well, not this season. We're not.
And I'm telling you, we need, and Watford and Stoke are just sitting there. That's 2 points gone minimum 2 points gone. We should have won one of those games potentially. So we need to pick up these points, especially around the Europa League games, and that's how we're going to make differential up to where we were last year. And we're not doing it, right? And the horizon does look gloomy, I'm afraid.
Well, and look, I mean, at some level, the mood in the club can be determined by the position in the table, and if that's 3 points, we're on 16 points, we're sitting fourth, we're above Chelsea, we're above Liverpool. And as shit as we might be or might not be, you're in fourth, you're above Chelsea, you're above Liverpool, and you're giving yourself a chance. And dropping points like that just kills that opportunity, because coming up next in the Premier League, it's at Everton, home to Swansea, at City, home to Spurs. It's a possibility of 3 out of 12 points. I mean, it's not great. And so, you know how quickly a loss can turn into a crisis at Arsenal. Well, how quickly can 4 losses from 5 games turn into a crisis? And at what point does the season come completely off the rails? Which leads back to my opening joke of the pod, which is we may have to put all our eggs in the Europa League basket, as it turns out. I just think when you're short on quality, you have to make up for that with preparation. You have to make up for that with commitment. You have to make up for that with coaching, with proper substitutions. All the deficiencies were on show on this day, and unfortunately, they've been on show way too often. I mean, our away record, as I mentioned earlier, I think is tied with teams like West Ham over the last year. So it's not looking good. We do have Europa League in midweek, and it'll be interesting because are we away? Are we at Belgrade, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's in Serbia. It's not a good place to have to go to play a game on the back of a loss. It's not a good place to have to go to play a game anytime. It'll be our hardest game in the group, and we're probably going to have to rotate pretty substantially. But it's just one of those times where another loss can start to build a narrative around the team that people are already predisposed to. So we'll see what happens. If nothing else, it's a good chance for ex-players and pundits to pipe up and tell us all the things wrong with Arsenal that we haven't already covered. In any event, we'll still be here. That's the worst thing about it. Tim is on Twitter at Stillberto. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure.
Clive's on Twitter at Clive P AFC, where the P stands for Please Can We Win a Game. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name's Elliot Smith. Block me on Twitter. Give us a 5-star review and write nasty things about Paul in the comments section. You've been waiting to. You've been holding back. Don't hold back anymore. Write the nasty things about Paul. We'll be back after the trip to Serbia, which, Tim, I understand you are not making.
No, I'm not going. So
yeah, well, fair weather fan, you still get to be a fan. That's fine. I imagine that you will.
He's lost it. Where's the commitment?
It took Arsene Wenger 20 years to kill you, but he killed you. That's good. Had to mention that. No, I imagine there's a reason that is less funny, but we won't dive into it. In any event, hopefully we will then be able to get your thoughts on the match afterwards. So.
Yes.
For the listener, it is a boon. In any event, we appreciate you guys being on. We appreciate everybody for listening. We love the Arsenal, and we love the chance to discuss the Arsenal through thick and thin. In any event, we will talk to you after the trip to Belgrade.